Write his social security number down.
What we're trying to do then is to just figure out what kind of variable, what level of measurement might we use a frequency distribution to describe our sample. Would we use a frequency, would we say how many people, if there were scores from 0 to 1,000 and we had 10,000 people, would we tell, we've got 1,000 possible scores and 10,000 people, would we typically describe all 1,000 scores with a frequency distribution? How many of them scored 17? How many of them scored 18? How many of them scored 19? What kind of variable would you use a frequency distribution to describe that, the values of that variable? Think about the 4 levels of measurement. Okay, but
Can I ask you?
yeah, so are we having trouble with what a frequency
Can I
distribution
see
is?
it?
Yes.
Yeah, is there any way for you to document this visually, please?
What is a frequency distribution?
So I can see what it would look like on a chart.
Oh, duh. Oh my gosh. Sorry, that was for myself, not for again. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're.
Okay, well, it's kind of sort of knew what I was talking about, like, instead of saying, like, it's a score from 0 to 10 would, or 0 to 100, so you would only have to use.
Okay, so we're gonna just lump all the zeros and 100 together and say that there were 6 people that scored from 0 to 100. We could sure do that. What happens when we do that? What are we doing? We're throwing away information. We're throwing away data. If we say that there were 6 people who scored between 0 and 100, we don't know if most of them scored 98 or 97 or 96 or 95 or 94. How many far do you want me to go? Or 0.
I would think that you could use this with demographic information, like if you're asking for.
Okay, demographic information. Tell me a specific variable, because would age, would that be a good one to describe like this? How many people were 13 and a half? How many people were 13 3/4? How many people were 14? How many people were 14 and a fourth? How many people were 14 and a half? What kind of variable? Demographics are good. What kind of demographic variable?
Nominal.
A nominal variable. A nominal variable. Now, we can describe all those other kinds, because remember, all of them have nominal characteristics as well. But how else are you going to describe a nominal variable other than with how many of them there were? If you want to describe this, the population of students in 690, section 500, 600, how would you describe them in terms of gender? Male and female. Okay. We know that there are males and females in the class. Not very. That's informative. I know that there are both genders in the class.
So there are 2 male and then 5 male.
There are 2 male and there are 11 female. And I could describe it like this. Now, that will bring me to a pretty important point here too, just a little bit. But Okay? So we need to think about the kind of variable that we have dictates the way, what we do with that variable when we want to try to communicate something about it. When we want to summarize the information about that, because we're not going to say male, male, female, 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 female. We're going to say 2 male, 11 females in the class. We could say, I don't know, how many master's students, how many G7s and how many G8s do we have? We could say that, couldn't we? We could use that. We could say how many blue eyes and how many brown eyes do we have? And if we didn't want to be, try to use genetics, we'd also have to say green eyes, I guess, or hazel or something. Okay? But eye color, that's a pretty good nominal variable. Hair color, all of them are nominal variables. And to summarize them, what we might do is do something like a frequency distribution. How else might we describe males and females in this class? We might, with a pie chart. And we might say, man, what would that tell us?
And I'm outnumbered.
Yeah, males are greatly outnumbered by the females. You don't even have to have the numbers to show that. We can see that like that. The frequency distribution, we have that, but we really don't have to have that. That's my point here. We take that away, we've got what? If this is this high, how high is that one there? Relatively, if this is this high, how much more is this one?
5 times, right?
Yeah, it's 5.5 times taller. Oh man, if you want to burn my britches, get one of these things that has graphs that don't have a zero on a count, and they'll show things like this, what is this one right here compared to this one right here? Don't look at the numbers over there. Look at this one compared to this one.
Like a third.
It's a third. No, it's not. This is 30,000. This is 6,000. It's a half. No, it's not a half. We have some ignoramus using a graph to try to show us something visually when it doesn't show what they're trying to show visually. So don't use, something like this.
What was the root of that word?
Ignoramus, yeah.
Is it anus or ignorant?
Whoa.
That's going on YouTube,
That's the
That's in
tale.
his voice. So they record his name down for him.
We can fix that.
He's got a
Have a
Swedish
link,
name.
link to his Facebook.
Great organ.
Have an annotated bow on there.
We'll include your social
Yeah, but here's even better.
While we're at it, might
You
as
know.
well.
Gosh, the handwriting.
That's 100,000 up to 107,000. What is this one here? 102,000. What's this one here?
107,
Well, no, this one right here has gotta be 3 times more than that one over there. This one's gotta be 3 times more than that.
So this is the type of graph that you want us to submit?
This is the type of graphs that, you've heard the expression, statistics lie and liars, or figures lie and liars figure. No, not if you use,
Figures lie and liars figure.
That's a good one.
yeah.
I
You've never heard that one?
No, I mean, I'm very young.
That was one.
Giving you a hard
Young ones.
I was young one.
To tell you a story about being young once, writing children's books. Yeah.
You wrote children's book?
No, I didn't. But I was never a child.
I know.
Born in a car.
You were born in a car, you don't have a birth certificate. You can
Oh,
alien.
I did ask this question. I did ask this question. I bet if I asked it once, I asked it 100 times. Of Iraqis in 2008 in Iraq, how old would you be if you didn't know when you were born?
Old enough.
However you decide.
Man, you can, one thing, with the translator, it got all kinds of things, but it really would engage them, and some of them would really think about that. And it was a great way to see their orientation, whether they had a very logical orientation or an optimistic or pessimistic kind of thing. And I mean, you could just tell the optimistic ones that say things like, there'd be an old man, he'd say, oh, I'd be 40. You just knew that he was ready to go.
In this school, you do a lot of international relations work. You have a lot of intercultural relations where you're not necessarily dealing with someone who's got the same parameters that we do or the same value, like you were just explaining. So statistically, how do you represent something that is so human and imperfect and subjective?
I think when I went back to the beginning and said, look, I'm trained as a quantitative researcher, but the qualitative side has caught up with me, and everything we do is value laden. And so it's all about communicating, it's all about building. We talked last week about building relationships. I can tell you, I knew I was going to be successful in Iraq when our commanding general said, okay, Borlaug, this was Team Borlaug, Kyle, you'll have to interpret this for me. I didn't know what it meant. He said to us, most of the kinetic activity is past. Your job is to win the hearts and minds of Iraqis. And I said, oh, fat boy, you can do that. I wasn't even sure what the kinetic activity was.
I think you don't have to worry about those bullets being kinetic right through the back of your head anymore.
That's what kinetic meant. I had to ask someone, what do you mean about kinetic activity? That's fighting, okay? He said most of the kinetic activity is past.
in the battlefield.
Not all past, but it was mostly past. Your job is to win the minds, win the hearts and minds of the Iraqis. So I spent 6 months trying to do exactly that. Great peoples, peoples and people. 99% great folks. 1% messed it up for the other 99%. And there wasn't anyone, other than at the time, the U.S., to try to keep the 1% from taking over. We get out, ISIS, again, the 1%, come in and screwed it up for everyone. But 99%. Any of you go to the session last week with the future of Iraq? And you should have gone to the future of Iraq with Ryan Crocker, who was the ambassador when we were there. Son of a guns didn't answer a single one of my questions. I wrote them, I crinkled the paper, trying to get them to kind of stand out, get them and stuff. but they had 62 people on this task force and senior advisors who were looking at the future of Iraq. One of them, as one of his 9 duties, mentioned the word agriculture.
That's it.
And yet, we had all kinds of folks that would tell you that peace cannot be built on empty stomachs. You know, I just wanted to stand up and shout, did you bureaucrats ever think about that maybe you need to feed the people? Maybe you need to help the people feed themselves? Anyway, that's a whole other story. So, frequency distributions, your assignment here is to begin to look at the ways that statistics are used to inform, that data are transformed through statistics to inform us. So, you know, there's some kinds of things there, and samples and populations and their variables, the values of those variables are widely distributed or are distributed. Okay? So we can't talk about these 10,000 people that could have 1,000 different scores. We have to somehow or another capture and summarize those data so that the data inform us. All right? There are essentially 2 major ways that or 2 major things that we do using descriptive statistics to make information out of data. We get averages and we get dispersion. Okay? We get averages. That is a generic term. What all does average mean? What are some synonyms for average? Mean, whatever that means. Mean is a synonym. Typical is a synonym.
Most common or frequent?
Most common or most frequently. You know, if we wanted to talk about the average student in this class in terms of gender, what's the average student in here? What's the typical student in here?
That.
Female. What's that? It's female though, isn't it? Why did you come up with that? How did you come up with that? Because it's the most common.
You can expect it? Is it fair to say that you can expect it?
You could expect it if you went out and blindly chose one of them. You would expect it to be a female.
Would it be a good bet?
Was what?
Would it be a good bet?
Yeah, it's a good bet. It would be female. Anything else that average means?
Mediocre.
It also means mediocre. There are a bunch of things that average means. So in statistics, we would never talk about average. We would talk about measures of central tendency. Because if we say measures of central tendency, then all the little people out there that aren't educated like we are don't have any idea what we're talking about. It's just a highfalutin way to talk about an average, but it's a particular, we use particular kinds of words to talk about particular kinds of averages. Normally, if you're in a math class and you talk about an average, how would you calculate the average?
11 divided by the number.
Add them all up and divide by the number. Okay? That's a kind of average test score. But we couldn't take all the genders in here and add them up and divide by the number of genders and come up with, because that wouldn't make any sense. Okay? So we use measures of central tendency. There are 3 of them. 3 different measures of central tendency. You have them listed down there. Mean, median, mode. That's how you hear it said all the time, mean, median, mode. Mean, median, mode. That's weird that we would talk about in that order mean, median, and mode when we talked about scales of measurement and kinds of variables as nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Because then all of a sudden we talk about mean, median, and mode, and that's just the opposite way. It's just the opposite way that we would talk about levels of measurement. So if you have nominal variable, a named variable, a variable for which the values are not mathematically able to do things with, you can't add them and divide them by or anything like that, it wouldn't make any sense. What's the only measure of central tendency you could possibly use? Mode. Okay? Mode. And mode is that most oft occurring value of a variable. Now, over on the left-hand side, or maybe it's in your yellow sheet or something, gender is one of those that we might say is also a binary variable. Today's, psychologists might not, but, in times past, I'm just going to use the easy, the incorrect but easier way. We would talk about gender in terms of it being a binary variable. What does that mean? It has 2 values, 2 possible values. You're either male or you're female. Okay? Anything else that a 2-value variable could be called other than binary or a binary nominal variable? How about a dichotomous variable? What does dichotomous mean? Same as binary. You'll see it in the literature. Why do we have so many different terms for the same thing? To keep the uninitiated out of our little game. We don't want them. Have you ever been in a football huddle? And heard, have them call plays,
Have their own language.
Yeah. Strong, set, right, wide, zip, 38, sweep on 2. Break the huddle and go out there and run the play. What did this say? Omaha! You ever heard that? He's in Denver. Oh, they can't even hear him in Omaha. I don't know what that means. Some lingo. We have our own lingo. And so mode is one of those. Abbreviation for mode. See it? MO. MO. Okay. Mode. And it's the most oft occurring value. Now, let's say that you have ethnicity, you have 8 different ethnicities. And you have, in public school, in some middle Texas public school, you have a class of 7 white non-Hispanics, 7 Hispanics, 3 Asian, 2 Native Americans, and an African American. Now, what's your mode? We got two of them, so what do we call that? Call it bimodal. We got two modes, we call it bimodally distributed data. So this is, mode is a central tendency. And then we're going to come back to distribution or dispersion of around the central tendency, and we'll find how we do that. But let's go to the next one then. Let's go to median. What's median? Oh, can mode be used to describe a racial variable? Does a racial variable have a mode? Absolutely. Or maybe bimodal. But remember that racial variables and interval variables and ordinal variables have all the characteristics and qualities of a nominal variable, so yes, it has a mode. Okay? The most oft occurring value of that variable. Well, median. There's our next one. Median, nominal data don't have medians as a central tendency, as a measure of central tendency. How about ordinal data?
Yes.
Yeah. How about interval data and ratio data?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Give me an example, or how do you figure? We know how to figure the mode. We count the frequencies, and whichever one is the most frequent is the mode. How do we do median?
Put all the values in order.
Put the values in order. Remember, we can do that with ordinal data. Put the values in order, and then select the middle. So if we have we could use pieces of pie that are whatever size or something, you know. But we could say we got a piece of pie that's a third, a piece of pie that's a sixth, a piece of pie that's a fifth, a piece of pie that's a 1/13, a piece of pie that's yeah, we got 5 pieces of pie. We're going to order them from biggest piece of pie to smallest. The pies are all the same size that they were cut from. Maybe more than one pie. I don't know if this would be more than one pie. That's about one pie. Order them for me. Are they in order? From
No.
biggest to smallest, or smallest to biggest, or
Third, quarter, fifth, sixth, 13th.
what? A third,
A quarter.
a quarter,
A fifth.
a fifth, a sixth, and a 13th. What's the
A fifth.
median?
1/5.
Got 5 of them. The third one then is the median.
Even though quantitatively it's not.
Quantitatively, it is the middle score. Quantitatively, it is. It is the median.
It's not the average, but it's.
It is the average. It is a kind of average. You're talking about an arithmetic average.
Correct.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just being
I
being
don't.
persnickety because statisticians are that way. Average, there's a bunch of ways of doing average. Mode is an average. Median is an average. Mean is an average. It is a measure of central tendency. Okay? The central tendency of this data is for this to be the median, MD. Okay?
But it's the median because it's in the middle of the data set, not because it's the
Yeah, that's okay. Let me what we're trying to do is describe the average. Okay? Let me give you what you want to do it for real? Let's do it for real. Okay? Let's just everyone give their annual income. Okay? We won't do that, but I'm gonna just do it for you. I'm gonna just do it for you.
Nobody's gonna be impressed with mine.
I'm gonna do the average income.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is describe
Negative.
our average income. Okay? And there are probably some of it was negative, but we're just gonna say someone that don't work. You know, there are two of us that don't work. You know? And there's some, you know, we just got a student worker job or something. That's how much money I make. You know, somebody else makes $1,200. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Is this monthly?
We got 13. I don't know what it
Daily,
is.
weekly?
It's just some numbers.
Maybe we're just.
I'm not gonna make it on $1,200.
Well, let's just pretend it's the 30s and we're doing all right. $500 a month. I'm
I
all
was thinking it
set.
was $1,200 a day.
This is a really liberated university for the 30s, I have to say. Women in this class?
Let's see, who's that back there? Oh, yeah, I know, I seen.
Which one of those is yours, Dr. Byers?
There.
That one.
Yeah, you know who's sitting back there?
The president.
No, it's Bill Gates back there. It's Bill Gates sitting back there. Now, what I want you to do is tell me what's the average income of our class.
What's that average?
You want to do the arithmetic?
How do you want
You want to do the average? You want to do the arithmetic average to tell us what? And would that describe what the average income is? Do the arithmetic average?
That's one average.
I call them
Would that be the average?
Mode.
Would that describe? Would that inform us?
Zero.
All I have is that there are 15 of us, and so on average,
Is that 2,000? Okay, that's true.
there are 15 of us, 14 of us don't make anything, and Bill Gates makes $15 billion a year, and so on average, we make $1 billion a year. Does that really describe the income of the group?
Because it's
No.
so skewed.
Does that inform us?
No.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Remember, that's what we're using. We're not figures lying, liars figure. We're trying to use statistics to inform. What are you going to use to inform someone what the average income is from this group?
Median person.
You're going to use the median, aren't you? You're going to use the median. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whoa, there's 10. How do we do it when there's 10?
Just get rid of the top 0.
It'd be 20.
So it's really 1.5.
Oh,
Oh, good.
find the average between whatever, 20,000. The two, is it 20 and 30, or 20 and? is it
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Between, you know, so
That's
it's right in there, it's halfway between those two, isn't it? So the average, what average is this?
The median.
That's the median. So if we're trying to use data to inform our readers and inform ourselves, we would not just present the arithmetic average. It would be misleading. It would be the arithmetic average. It would not inform.
That's why I always have to be skeptical about.
Do what?
I said that's why I always have to be skeptical about statistics.
No, you don't always have to be skeptical. You should
Commercials that can say like.
you should
on average.
know the statistician and know if they are, you know,
I'm just saying.
They show the numbers.
yeah. No, I'm just playing devil's advocate. You're exactly right. Exactly right. Researchers are always skeptics. In fact, you know, sometimes I think that's what happens to researchers as they get old and stuff. That when skepticism turns into
Healthy cynicism.
cynicism and sarcasm and that sort of thing, we've gone beyond skepticism.
What happens if you're young?
Oh, then the same thing happened. Well, there ain't much hope for you.
you'll be a really good researcher.
No.
No, there's no.
So sometimes the median is the best. What about now? Do it. Report the average student. What kind of average would you want to report on those 12 scores?
It'd be like, what,
1,700 divided by.
Well, one way would be right here,
Oh, yeah. 600.
but watch what happens if you did this. Wouldn't change anything except it'd change that value a bunch, wouldn't it? I don't know. If we're only going to use one value to decide or to describe that, man, you know, we might want to do two of them. I still wouldn't report the mean. What two values would you report out of this set of data?
Well, it's not the mean, it's the median.
Yeah, report. Yeah, take report the median to a median in mode. There were 4 people that had no income. The mode was 0. That's pretty significant. The median was 9,600.
Would there ever be an appropriate time, or is there an appropriate way to discard outlier? I don't know if I'm using the right term, but the extremes.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
know,
we're
oh
talking-
man, that's getting way on out there though. That's getting way on out there. Guess what we're doing when we do the median?
Use that thing.
What did we do when we got the median here? What did you not discard, but what did you account for? The quote unquote extremes. That's the neat thing about the median, is it isn't influenced by the extremes. It's a pretty good statistic to know. Oh, wait a second, that's that word.